of the commissioners like to give us the opening prayer?
Sure, why not? Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us here this evening. We hope that tonight all discussion will be made with the best intentions for the future of our city, and that we'll have calm, cool heads as we're discussing it. Thank you, and amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Okay, let me read the agenda, which is really only two things on our agenda. I'll read the opening. Welcome to the City of Lake Helen Commission meeting. The agenda is regularly scheduled for commission meetings as posted at City Hall this week, the week of the meetings. The agendas will, and all backed up materials supporting the agendas are available. Any person that desires to address the commission must fill out a form and give it to the deputy clerk, and that would be a request to speak on any of the agenda items. So the first thing on our agenda, there are only two things. It's the business tax, and I'm going to turn that over to the city administrator and let him walk us through it.
Yes, Mayor, I had kind of asked this to be on there. It came out of the Strawberry Festival and the discussion of our own events in reference to the vendors should get a VCR, business tax receipt. And in consultation with Scott Simpson, our city attorney, he's advised me that typically those items would fall under your special event application, not VTR. VTR is more designed for a business with an office or a home-based permanent facility in the lake, in the city of Lake Helen. So VTRs, as I had them in my mind as a for any vendor, they don't fall under the state statute for VTRs. So we probably don't have to spend a lot of time tonight on VTRs unless you want to talk philosophically about having them or not. Because my question bringing up is tied into the vendor scenario. In fact, what Scott did tell me is that we did charge VTRs for the Strawberry Festival. He said that going into next year, that should probably be looked at as terms of a itinerant merchant charge, different than VTR, as a special event. And his recommendation on the program that we've got in the park, while if a vendor is there, say 50 out of 52 weeks, he said you might argue that that's an extension of their office in the park. But he said his recommendation was that the board can establish any fee they want for someone participating. He just felt that we needed a little bit more formality in the record keeping and the bookkeeping in reference to that process. So without laboring and going into BTR, if that's okay with you guys, we can kind of view that as a non-event, because I had it specifically tied into the conversation with Karen involving parking in the park.
Commissioner?
As long as all the vendors for all the events are treated equally.
Yeah.
And on your point with vendor receipts, I know when I started doing sales at the market in the park back around 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, every time we paid her the fee, I think back then was $6 or $7 to be there, she would give us a receipt. So back then she did receipts, but I guess after COVID, those kind of went away.
Yeah.
Get her to go back to doing the receipts again, and I think that would cover your thing about getting the records.
Yeah.
You should just turn the book over to you when it gets in.
Yeah. And that's basically what that came down to, was the county standpoint. Now, a food vendor falls under a different category. They're Department of Health, and they get like a food truck gets issued a permit by Volusia County Department of Health. So those are still required to go through a certain regulation. If somebody's cooking and serving food out in the public, they're still regulated by the state. So that particular type of vendor may be required to get a different, file their licensing, not necessarily get a BTR, but we have those records on file. But again, as Roger said, that can all be part of the discussion on the special events or the special event coordinator. So
Now, a vendor, it's not a pop-up event where a vendor shows up and, not a vendor, a food truck. You have to provide that information about the health department in City Hall before he shows up.
yes,
Okay, so what I meant by that, there's no pop-up food truck shows up without having to give us the actual documentation that he is certified. That,
and yes.
that's how we do it now.
Yes, and in fact, that actually is in your code, 4.17.00, open air sales. And it has a specific section in there that deals with food merchants, you know, that prior to even the submittal of the event application, they're supposed to provide the city with all that licensing, their health inspection, and their license, you know, with the health department, and that regulates the food truck. So other than that type of vendor, the other ones that are in the market in the park, actually on any city event, he said you would deal with like the Strawberry Festival, kind of like Bike Week, you know, where private businesses will rent a portion of their property to these vendors who are selling items and whatever for the folks or whatever in town, and then each one of those businesses get an itinerary license, which is kind of like a peddler's license. So that would be separate from the BTR, so be a whole lot of reason for us to, because the BTR, as I talked with Eric, primarily focuses on our commercial businesses here in town, and we do charge it on a home-based business, but that's probably a little bit more of an honor system, because we don't have a system that goes out. You know, if somebody's running a business from their home, unless there's a complaint of customers and deliveries and that type of thing. If somebody's selling something online, technically, when they're a business, they should get a BTR, but we have no way of verifying what someone may or may not be doing in their home. Usually what happens there, as I said, a lot of deliveries are coming, customers are showing up, and then not only do they need BTR, but they're actually violating your ordinance in a sense, so running home base. But so the bulk of the BTR is really directed at the commercial businesses and retail businesses that actually have locations here in town. So I think on that, my recommendation is we could go from BTR and go ahead and go into discussion about special event and that whole process, if that's okay with the mayor and commission.
We don't need to address anything else in the BTR yet.
Good.
State law clears it out, like you said, they list all the exemptions, and we can't change that if we wanted to.
I would like our application on there, they only list 3 of the state codes that are on there, and one of them actually has multiple things in there, that some of those that are listed under that one thing on state code is actually has its own separate. Because I know that you had on there about spouses of veterans and certain low-income persons, and disabled, age, and widowers and minor dependents listed under the same one, and they're 2 separate numbers on the state thing. So I might need to go through and adjust those
On our application.
on the application.
But that's for someone who's exempt.
Yeah.
Well, it's on the application, they gotta, because the state law even says they have to fill out the form and certify that they are exempt, and then they have to show documentation that they're exempt.
The easiest way is to have a generic form and say, and then we attach the exemptions and say, see the attached exemptions, and you're there from there, so that way we're not missing one or duplicating or covering numbers. So we can do that, because state law is what's there, and even if you wanted to create one, we don't have that ability to create an additional exemption to state law.
But there's probably something probably need to go through with the attorney also,
Yeah.
because some of them leaves up to interpretation by the city as to whether they want them to be exempt or not.
And while every penny is important, you know, in terms of running your community, but we're, minus the Strawberry Festival, we're really talking somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 a year is your actual revenue from BTRs. So, I mean, while everybody counts, but it's not like we're talking about $100,000 in terms of that process.
Jim?
Yes,
Not be rude,
Oh,
but
okay.
direct questions to the mayor.
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Somewhere between 2011 and 2015 was when the food trucks started. And at that point in time, I believe there was something into the ordinance that they were considered mobile vendors. And I think they would have to pay, I think it was, that they had to pay each time they came. So it might, you might want to resolve that.
I'll second.
Any more comments? Anyone from the audience? Yes, Joe?
Ann's right. I think it was 2000, right between there, the Parks and Rec had their first food truck event. I can't remember what it was called, but they had food trucks out for the night, and it was a mobile. It was mobile that way, so they charged them individually for that event. But we had, and when I was doing them, we had to keep those licenses and insurance on file. So if they were to come back next week or 2 weeks from now, we would have that information. They have to update it when it ran out of time.
Any further discussion? Next one?
What I'll say, I'm going to make a generic statement, and hopefully this comes out right. This is a work session, not a commission meeting.
Right.
And so on each item as we go through, you as a board will have to determine whether or not you take public comment under Florida law. Since you're not making a vote on a decision, public comment is not required. Now, if we go into the other meeting, then that's a different category.
All right.
So just depending on how we want to go. I mean, if we want to run on, start running time, individual, but this is a work session for you to discuss items.
This, I'm in agreement. This, because of sunshine, we have to discuss these things in open. So this is a workshop, not a workshop. We don't make any decisions. We don't make any votes. We just kind of flush it out what it is that we want to do. If there's any more comments from the commission, I'll take it. If not, we'll just move to the next. Okay. Home occupation.
I do have a recent statement on the agenda for the workshop. Maybe we should have thought about putting in there no public remarks, because we do have it listed. So we're just going to take the route that we're not going to have any public remarks tonight on the workshop.
On the workshop, no. The special meeting, we have, definitely have a comment.
But as Linda said, it's in your agenda that we've got to have the right to make a comment.
Yeah, that is, you're right in that this is a generic form that we use for this is the same form that we use when we have city commission meetings. So it should have been struck.
And yeah, generic shouldn't count.
Excuse me?
Generic, if we're using generic forms for everything. you have to
No,
be
we
very-
don't always.
It's a template.
It's a template.
Template, but generic doesn't matter, so.
Okay. Mr. Gleason.
I think the other issue is a combination of all of us. In the previous budget, position or a line item was allocated for an event coordinator with a certain budget. That's not really been addressed in the time that I've been here, other than the fact when it came up during the increase in fireworks, and it was a recommendation of the board to use the money that was allocated to that position to offset the increase in the fireworks. So we would use a budget amendment for you later in the year for that cleanup. because we had $10,000 budgeted, the bill was 19,500, so 9,500 comes from somewhere, so at the previous meeting, when you approved the contract, you all located to come from that line item, and there's been various comments, you know, from the board individually in reference, so I was not here when that was created and that budget was approved. I don't know what the intent was. Was that a budget that covered the cost of events and a person? Was it a person? Because what happened in the current budget, there was a line item of $10,000 that got taken out. And that was a line item that typically cost the budget when event items had been charged against. And the only thing in the budget involving events was a $10,000 line item for July 4th. So we're deficit spending on the event side. And so somewhere maybe out of this, we have a discussion of exactly what was that intent and what is it this board wants to see going forward, you know, in combination of is it a position, is it a contracted position, and then, you know, are we talking about just the 5 city events, or are we talking about this person being the point person for the special event application and kind of coordinating all events that come through Lake Helen under one umbrella, so there's a one-point shop or one-point person direct to, and that's just for open discussion.
I think that I was not here then either. Maybe the other commissioners, Roger. The event coordinator line item of $60,000 was put on the line item by the previous commission. It was without any basic description, but it was just, I'm assuming that it was a placeholder. And that placeholder was that when we did our budget, the $60,000 that is on that line, we could then come up with a event coordinator. And of course, now we're a new commission. The old commission and the old mayor and the former mayor put that on their line item. This has now come to us. So now, as the commission, we can determine what we want to do with that $60,000 or not. I've gotten a lot of feedback from the community that they said the $60,000 is too much for a events coordinator, and I too agree. But I kind of fleshed it out that it was something that was giving us the ability to expand or contract. When they made the $60,000, they didn't say what the $60,000 was for. Now, obviously, what that $60,000 could be used, part of it could be for an event coordinator, whatever that number is, and that's up to the commission. The other balance of that $60,000, which Jim just said that because we were in a deficit with our fireworks, that $10,000, explain that, Jim?
Yeah.
$10,000 out of that $60,000?
Yes. I mean, because you approved the contract for 19.5, and so in order to pay that, you know.
Deficit spending.
Yeah, there's no line, well, there is, there's a line item for 10,000, so we'll go against that. So on the next report, or when they bill us for the 50% balance, because I think we just have to do a deposit, so it won't show a negative on the next report, but it would be after the event. It'll show that as a negative $9,500 and any other costs associated with July 4th to go against that line item. So then later in the year, before we get to the close of the fiscal year, we would come back with a budget amendment that then the commission would authorize transferring X amount of dollars from that 60,000 personnel line item to the event line item to offset the shortfall. So on that 60, you kind of already anticipate that 10,000 of that is now down 50.
Right, so now in order to keep that line item current, the $10,000 that we were shorting for the fireworks is going to be subtracted from the $60,000. We don't have to adjust the budget anywhere. So now we're talking about an events coordinator. It's not $60,000 anymore. It's $10,000. I'm sorry, $50,000 that could be still can be decreased even more. How would you like to discuss that? Anyone?
The way I understood when we presented, they created a line item budget to cover hiring an event coordinator. It didn't mean that we had to pay $60,000 as their starting salary. It's whatever got negotiated as a starting salary, and the balance would cover the benefits, the retirement, the sick pay, and everything else that the city pays above and beyond what the employee gets subtracted from their paycheck. So that's why, because like when you hire somebody, there's added benefits that's also increased in their budget, but not in their salary. So that's why the line item was created so high, was not as a starting salary, but as a place mark for whatever we hire them at. There's some added money to cover the amount that we have to pay into their retirement, the amount that we have to pay into their health benefits, the amount that we got to pay into whatever uniforms that they may need and stuff like that.
And also that did not necessarily have a expense account. In other words, if they have to purchase, like for the Easter egg hunt, they got to purchase 500 eggs.
They got to go through the clerk.
Go through the clerk, and that money comes from where? From that,
General fund.
from the general fund. So any other expenses that the event coordinator, I guess the point I'm getting at is that the event coordinator in the past, when we first, and Ann was here on the commission when we made Johnny the event coordinator, gave her that title. It was in the middle of the year, around April, and there was $8,000 that the commission had put on the budget for the events coordinator. We hadn't got an events coordinator. By April, it came up again. So when it came up again, there was $8,000 left in the budget, and there were 8 months left in the budget. So because there were 8 months and $8,000, we allocated her $1,000 a month to act as the events coordinator. At the end of the year, it turned out that she basically came back to the commission and basically said that she was spending a lot of her own money. So that $1,000 didn't come to her, but it was an expense that she was bearing at the expense of what would have been the allocation. When we were going to do the next budget, I think the money that we allocated was doubled it, like $16,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I know that instead of it coming as a budget, I know Cookie was here for that one because we did not have a janitor. So we said that we might need some money to have City Hall cleaned up. So part of that money was moved over for custodial services, which there was no line item for custodial services. So my point is that the event coordinator has moved around a few places in a few different iterations of it. So now where we're at now, where I guess I got Karen provided us a list of events, not the events that she necessarily does, but events that when we do come up with when we advertise for the event coordinator, you would want to be able to have what the job description of that job is. And the things that are on this list are things that happen within the course of the city year, and that it is an event. Now, whether the coordinator, like the parade, Cookie does the parade. Doesn't get paid to do the parade, but we kind of know that Cookie's going to do the parade. So there's a number of things, I guess, that as my understanding of it, and if anyone has any different, because I'm trying to catch up to this because I was not here when this was written, but as we now are here, we're at a discussion, we need to be able to come up with a way that we can, I think, have an event coordinator that would be a reasonable income salary or whatever. And then also, if we didn't do anything else, but create a line item for the budget that the event coordinator may require, how do they access it now? They send their receipt?
Well,
Invoice, I guess.
yeah, I mean,
Help me out.
let's just wipe the slate clean and we'll talk generic, okay? Not the way it's being
was.
done, okay? Let's just talk generic. You create a position of an event coordinator, okay? Then that event coordinator would have the responsibility of taking the number of events that you're doing and then almost creating a budget for each one of those events. Right now in our budget, you have a July 4th expense. Okay, yes, it's not going to cover what we need, and the only other event that you have in the budget is the Street Buster 5K that's actually listed, as an event item in Parks and Recreation. So in theory, an event coordinator would take not only the city events, but then would present a budget of what it's going to take for each one of them. And so you could almost have them listed in your budget almost as a subset under the event coordinator. And then, the board approves that come October for funding your events for next year. Now, some of that is offset by donations and vendors and what have you, but that shows up on a revenue line item, so it doesn't directly go back into the pot. They do at the end of the year, but from an accounting standpoint, they stay separate, because if you took, I'll give you an example, on the Street Buster 5K, what I'm looking at on the most recent report, you budgeted $12,000. We spent $16,538, so if you just look at expenses, you would think, oh my gosh, we're $4,538 in full. But the accountant has put a note off to the site that there was $30,000 in revenue. So it's not necessarily that you can have a negative line item. It's not necessarily a bad thing as long as the corresponding revenue item.
Just so we're on the same page, it's not Street Buster, it's the Stress Buster.
Sorry, not that.
Okay, all right, I know we had another 5 thing. It's the Stress Buster, okay. Perfect, I'm sorry.
Now, maybe I'm trying to release stress, but I say it's street.
Has people been complaining about tearing up our streets?
Yeah, so
Okay.
So just in theory, that's, how it would be ideal. And then, yes, Mayor, what you talked about, within that, there would be a system where, a vendor would have some type of application on file, so we know who is participating in that event, a contact, and let's say Market in the Park. If on a regular Saturday basis, then the person would be checking those people in, would be getting somebody's signature, that they pay X amount of dollars for their spots. And then when that money comes into the city, you'd have not only the money coming in, but then you'd have a sheet coming in with the number of vendors who are there, and they sign, and then the envelope should match the sheet.
I'm also feeling that the advantage of having an event coordinator would have somebody that's at, I'm sorry, Cookie, we'll have somebody at the table when we discuss these things, because the commission can speak. Karen, she'll show up, or she'll get a phone call. If we have a designated person that is the event coordinator, when we meet to discuss the upcoming events, the event coordinator would be at that table and would have input and as well as insight as to how we can do it it's best. Is that okay? More? Anything else?
Vern, I'd like to add
Yes.
something, if I may. I attended all of the budget meetings, and Roger kind of remembers it a little differently than I do. Cameron presented the line item, a salary for an events coordinator. These commissioners were here. He was pretty well set on $75,000. He felt that that was an adequate salary to bring in an event coordinator. Well, the commission didn't like that at all. They thought it was just too much money, especially when you go and look at other cities and what they're paying their event coordinators, and especially with the Breeze, a lot less than $45,000 or so. So at the end of the day, after going back and forth, the salary range came down to $60,000. That did not include the benefits. That's why it was put on the salary range, because I even had questions about it. So we were all kind of concerned about that amount of money going into an event coordinator to do 4 transactions, not 5.
One of the things that I'm confused about is that we previously had independent contractors and not employees. So would those benefits even be needed?
I'm sorry, Heather, we're kind of cross conversation. What did you say?
previously we had the event coordinator was an independent contractor. It had, a copy here, there might be another one floating around somewhere that I've seen recently. And so I'm not even sure that those benefits need to be added to that dollar amount. That,
Right.
if we were going to stick with 50.
We're talking about hourly, right, not contract.
Right, exactly, so.
So the event coordinator would be a private, what do you call it, independent contractor?
I think I'd be way more willing to consider that.
As
than
opposed to a salaried
salary
person.
employee, yes.
Okay?
Yeah, if you could, Mayor, I've got the current budget, and I've pulled out, and on the sheet where they list the positions for Lake Helen, it's Parks and Rec, events, vacant, exempt, $60,000, $28.85 an hour, and then $4,590 FICA and Medicare, $8,400 retirement, $10,000 health insurance, $325 life and disability, $400 dental. So just at $60,000, that position would cost $83,715 with full benefits.
So that was something that came up at a discussion as a ballpark figure, but then we started the add-ons that are required add-ons. The add-ons makes the salary much higher. Well, the salary is going to be the same, the benefits are going to make it a lot more expensive. So to have someone in as a private contractor, as opposed to a city employee, that would be a discussion.
And I'll be honest, when we were having the budget meeting, the reason that I was agreeable to putting the $60,000 line item plus was because then it's budgeted in, and if the discussion came, now it has, we could discuss it at that point. It was at least a placeholder to where we could get to a place of discussion. I personally do not want to see this position become employee.
And I think also to Heather, you're absolutely.
Could you speak up? We're recording.
I'm talking as loud as I can. Also, at that time, things just seemed a little wishy-washy of where we were going, where we were headed, and I think the concern was, what's that person going to do with 4 events?
Right.
And you did argue, you were one of the commissioners that stood fast on the amount of money. So,
I mean, we didn't even have a job description at that point. I think we have a little bit more of an outline now to look at and to consider. But even at that point, I was confused at even what the position was. So now we need to get into the weeds a little bit and talk about what those needs look like. But I can't imagine it being a full-time position that requires benefits.
Now, we would be starting with a list of what events are part of that discussion. Cookie, you
I
can.
got the list right here.
Okay, Cookie, but you're not yet.
Okay, I
Calm
got
down.
the list right here, so you can look at it.
Okay, so
workshop.
would you say that again? What was that? What was it say?
That she didn't think it would be a full time.
Yeah, what was the full?
There's no need for.
Right, so in other words, this is a list of what I've been given as events that take place.
That's what we were talking about, and there's a lot of stuff that's on the list that are not city functions. They're local organizations that put on the function. It's just the coordinator would have to be able to know when they are so that other events aren't piled on top of each other.
Right, it's like a traffic cop. So we got this event coming, so we don't have 2 events scheduled in the same month because we're not talking to each other
On the same day.
on the same day, rather. I'm sorry.
And then
So,
also with a coordinator working half-time, part-time, as a contractor. Currently, we have that, but our city staff, the girls in the office, are still providing their time to help in these events. So we've got to consider the time and dollars out of their salaries as going to something else.
So allocating city staff on something that a event coordinator should be doing would be duplication.
I think so. I think it's
There-
very good.
I mean, there are some areas and on your application, you know, you have a fee for public works. There's not a fee listed for police, but I know the chief, you know, has an overtime rate. Like the Strawberry Festival was about $1,000 chief. They pay.
That was for 2 people.
Yeah, so I mean, so there is a charge you can put to staff for, that you need to account for in terms of the cost of the event. Ideally, when you're looking at, and I know you're talking city events, but if you think of the master list of all the events that go on, that position could still be the gatekeeper of the special event application would go to that person. So they would do the checklist to make sure everything's in place, and then before it ever gets to the commission, you know, that's been done. Not that they're putting on the event, but they're taking care of the administrative side, and at the same time, because they know when the city events are done, they also know calendar-wise to not make sure you have 2 or 3 on the same day, so you're pulling from there. So I mean, so if you are going to put some, it's just a recommendation, you would be looking at it in the sense that they would have kind of an overall responsibility to be not only the coordinator of the city events, but the point person for those who want to come to Lake Hemphill to do an event. And it may not take logistics on their part, other than managing the application and the process when we get it to you on the agenda.
I think what we had I think what we have with the stress buster is that we have a race that comes through the city. We've had several years in a row. Now we have the Leprechaun 5K. So now with the Leprechaun 5K and the stress buster, it's really duplicating what the stress busters were doing. And also we're taking into consideration what the public works needs to do, what the police needs to do, so they don't just get absorbed into it. Well, they're going to show up anyway, but at least if we put it on an event that is all of the expenses that go into the event, some of it gets washed away. If you show up and Rick might need 4 guys on instead of 2, or the chief might need 3 guys on, or in some cases, we don't pay for the reserves. No, not paying for the reserves, but
For a city event.
For a city event. So at that table, when we have that event, you would be the one that would say, well, I only have 2 salaried officers on, but we need 4 or 3. You would make that decision. And that conversation could also be part of the event coordinator's overview as to, okay, well, we need police, we need public works, and we go from there. That's something that I think, from what I'm just saying, that's what I see is missing. We don't have that in a way that we can kind of codify it and say, well, this is how we're doing it. But
Well, the stress buster and the 5K, even though they're the same type of event, they're not duplicates. Because the Leprechaun 5K came about to fill in a void where the runners didn't have nothing to do in that time frame, and they were looking for something to do. So that was a void filler for their things, even though it's the same type event. There's some places that have 3 or 4 of them a year.
that was my point, because even if it becomes a successful enough event for runners, I'm a runner. I know that if there's an annual event, I know like Be Strong, Me Strong in the Land, that's a huge race. There are other races that can come about. So if we can get a template to how we do it, so that we don't have to start every race with something new, at least we have something to work on.
You know, what the event coordinator was going to say earlier was the event coordinator would need to be somebody like Bobby Morales. He gets the plans and everything from the sport board and
I got you.
PLDRC. He goes through them, make sure everything's up to par, then presents them to the commission for the commission approval. The event coordinator would do the same thing with the events. She would get the events application, go through, make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and all the S's are underlined and everything else, and then say, okay, it meets the requirement, and present it to the commission. commission. So that's what it would do as a contract employee.
And as an event coordinator, I would think that it would be their job to go out and look for different events. Events that doesn't necessarily have to be out in the
Events
street.
that provide benefit to the city.
Exactly. So the events coordinator, I guess, in another 8, 9 years from now, if we're doing those kinds of events where we do have valuable assets in events, we're not there yet, but the city's growing and things can expand to that.
Event coordinator in larger cities like Deltona, they've actually got 2 event coordinators. They got one that does the center of Deltona because it's a venue building. So they got an event coordinator that promos that. They also got an event coordinator that answers to the Parks and Recs director. And they do the things that go on outside in the parks and stuff, like their Halloween festival, their 4th of July festival, and whatever else the city does that's in the city parks and stuff. That's what that event coordinator, but they work underneath the Parks and Rec director.
So that alone takes us outside of Lake Ellen to look at how someone else is doing it, and then could be able to bring that back to the city.
Yeah.
That's another event coordinator's opportunity.
You have a pretty good event request application. I was impressed with the fact that, you've got pretty detailed on what they're supplying. I don't know how old it was when the last time it was updated, but kind of part of that responsibility would be also in working, with staff to see. For example, for Ricky, is $30 an hour? What should he charge? Should that be a different rate? Are we covering city's costs? Because, while we want the events to pay for themselves, now these are more involving not city events. These are involving the outside entity, so I'm blending the two. So let me separate that. You charge, $40 a pavilion, $60 for open space, $35 to be equestrian covered area. And I don't know where those rates came from, and maybe there's a time to kind of look to see, are they market rates? Are we charging enough for the wear and tear on those places that they come to? And again, going back to, not putting Rick on the spot here, I don't have an answer from Rick, but, is that the amount? And we have a line item on there for the police, but, it doesn't say what the charge is. And so, working with Brandon, and we could tell them, what the average off-duty officer is going to cost with, our admin costs. I'll add just one more little twist that I'm not sure, because I can't find it anywhere on the fee schedule, but I'm going to use the Strawberry Festival as an example. I think the last fiscal year, they paid $4,000 for the event, and this year they paid $5,000 for the event, but I can't find anything that justified how or where that number came up.
Okay.
Well, while you're looking, while we're talking about this event application, there's a lot of questions in there that don't seem to apply to the events that happen all the time. They're kind of, it seems like maybe we need to have 2 different variations of the event application. Because, we have some folks that do the same event over and over and don't need CP and all of that. So we might want to look at paring it down to a simpler version, and then, because 10 pages is.
We could do that, yes, or still use one, and then NA is okay, meaning if their event doesn't cover there. In terms of that, but we can look at that, but I guess, Roger, maybe I didn't clarify. The section you pointed out to me says donation of percent of revenue. So applicants are required to donate at least 25% of their net revenue. But I didn't see anything from the Strawberry Festival telling us what was their net revenue, and therefore how did it
No,
equate
because
to the 5,000.
the contract was set up on a specific amount instead of going by the commission.
But who made up that? Okay, not bashing Lee, but in the sense of, that's one of those things that get you in trouble in the sense of, you know, I charge you 5,000, but I charge you 2,500, you know.
Is there a way that we can,
That's what I mean, there should be a fee schedule that says something that's either based around, you know, hours and volume, number of vendors, I mean, some formula that fits for each event. So Jim shouldn't have to guess. Next year, Strawberry Festival comes and they say, well, you know, we paid you 5,000 last year, and I think Lee went up 1,000. Okay, I mean, yes, he got the city $1,000 more, but there wasn't anything based on that.
And you just do it yourself next year.
every
year we go up one.
is there a line where that, where the revenue stream from events are tracked? Or does it all go into the general fund? So is there any way that someone can say, over the course of 1 year, we had allocated X amount of dollars for events, and there was a return of X amount of dollars, or there was a deficit of X amount of dollars? Because somewhere along the line, if we don't keep an eye on the feel-good events, they become very costly. And that is what the Creative Arts Cafe became as a restaurant. It became very costly. It was a good feeling kind of thing because people like to go to the restaurant, but when, I see my friend Ann over here, when those bills came in, it was not a happy place. So we don't want to put ourselves in a position where.
I don't know if our county system does that or not, but I know on,
It did way back when.
but I know on Quicken, I could create like a Leprechaun 5K tag. Any income that comes in, I put that tag on it. Any expenses that goes out, I put that tag on it. Then I only have to go into the tag file, pull up every day, every item, and every amount that dealt with that tag item, so that all deals with the 5K. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if our accounting system can do the same thing.
I see Aaron back there, is there any?
It breaks it down into accounts. You have the events account, market and park account. I mean, it separates it into accounts, so you can find out how much we've made and how much we've spent.
Okay.
That's entire.
See, we don't ask you all those things, but when we have meetings like that, then.
Yeah, that's kind of like the reports that are in there with like the market and park, how much we've made in the last 2 years. I mean, you can pull reports on anything pretty much.
So, ours does do tags.
yeah, and yes, everything goes into the general fund. Okay, I mean, that's what it is. The only thing that doesn't go to the general fund is your impact fees and utilities, you know, whatever, because they're separate line items. The stress buster is the only one where maybe it's just Zach, who's the contract accountant, just highlighted a note letting you know that, you know, the revenue exceeded the expense. So when you look at that as a negative, it's there. But as Aaron said, you could set it up so that when you get a budget report at the end of the year, you say, okay, July 4th cost was $23,000, and we brought in $34,000, you know.
Where are we bringing that from?
Well, on some city events, I mean, yes, you can recognize that often we get paid for them, right? Okay, so, but, you know, we can recognize that, I mean, you know, because you get donations and you get sponsors, you work, you go for it, but if you want them in your community, you think they add to the culture and the quality of life, then some of that could be expended. But Mary, you're absolutely right. You still want to track all of that because they can get away from you before you know it, you're spending more money than what you anticipated for feel good.
Okay. Yeah, my question, just as a thought placeholder. After we have this workshop, what would be the next logical thing to do toward that event coordinator?
We need to create a job description.
A job description? Okay. Add that down there.
We got something called a scope of work, which was Exhibit A from the event coordinator's contract. So, I mean, that could be a good starting point. And it lists half the events that were on there.
Yeah.
Some of them are named differently now than what they were in the past.
So we need to create a job description. Many times in the past, when I spoke about job descriptions with regards to salary, I've said this many times, we have a job description that someone gets hired to do this, and their salary is this. And then as time goes on, the job description keeps creeping up, the salary doesn't. So then when we go to replace this person, the next person coming in is not going to take this salary to this amount of work. So somewhere, in other words, we need to be able to track that so that we can keep a, we call it a reasonable, reasonable behavior. Base count?
Base scale.
Base scale, yes.
Job description that matches what they do.
Yeah, and over time, I guess that would have to be at least looked at, because part of what I've seen in the past is that when our employees are now stuck in a position that's not paying them much, that don't have a what do you call it, upward mobility, it then becomes, we, I think, as a commission, we tend to rely on the fact that we've got our employees. I'll say Rick back there. Rick is saving us money that does not show up on our budget. There's money that he saves our city that if we were to put it in our line budget, it would expand our budget. And Rick is doing it now more so than before, because I'd always ask him to try to capture it. It's one thing to do it because you like it, because you love the city, because you want to see it done, but when it gets back to this level, we don't have the numbers that we could justify. We should be able to justify why we would pay a salary. We need to be able to justify why we need equipment. We need to be able to justify why, if I don't have salary, if I don't have staff, then let me get equipment that can do the work of 2 or 3 people. And then as our continue to grow, and I'm just using our public works, and I think that could be applicable even to the events coordinators, because there are things coming our way that we are now going to be, I hope to be, a destination city. So people come here and they want to be able to do things. We need to be able to accommodate them. We need to be able to have something where they can come, enjoy, and leave. That's been my mantra since I've been on this committee. You come, you enjoy, and you leave. So somewhere along the line, we got to make that connect with these monies that we're spending, or not necessarily money that we're spending, money that we are leaving on the table. Because we have the facilities, we have the capacity, but we're not utilizing it. And therefore that we are, I think, neglectful in that regard. But that's just my spiel.
If I could
Yes, sir.
use an example, and I want to thank Kelly Fresca on this. She brought in a folder to me involving the 2023 stress buster, not street buster. Okay. And not only does she have a packet in there broken down by participants and where they come from and what have you, but the real key thing, it's a one-page document that gives the financial details. And she tracks the number of participants, the registration by year, so you can see trends going. And it's almost like this is what you would have for each event. So you would know, as starting out, by the time it's done, it's what it's cost. And like we used in this example here, we said that we were in the negative, but, based on the 2023 report, that, showed out to be over 14,000, 14,134.90. And it's just a simple one-page document, but it'd be the kind of thing that that person would do for each one of the events, so that it provides the meat and potatoes, so we know what we're spending, what we're getting in.
Is that generated by the event, or?
I think this was done by Kelly
You did that?
in handling, but an example of what you would do with an event. So each one event would almost have its own folder with this kind of data
Gotcha.
and information, because at some point in time, you can make a determination, is the event worthwhile or not? And maybe when other ideas come up,
It's not cost
you
effective.
may decide, okay, That's not getting the turnout, we're not getting the participation, but yet we're still spending those dollars. Let's try something else.
Just as another note, the auto show we had this weekend, past weekend. Normally at the event, they have what they call the mayor's trophies, or they have each trophy would be each category would be a car, and the votes that car would get would then make that car the winner of that trophy. When I asked about it this year, they said that they did away with it because the clubs that were coming as a group, and they all vote for the same club, the same car, because it was their group car. So they just eliminated it. There is no mayor's trophy, there is no other trophy, but that's a case where they sort of modified what they were doing. They do give out the $50 bills at the end of the day, but you gotta have to look at that. So, and it was a lot smaller. It seemed bigger, but because they were all over the place. But in terms of cars, I think it was probably one of the smaller events, and that's even coming back from COVID, when we didn't have it.
Yeah, the biggest complaint I heard on it was they had groups showing up early and claiming spots, and the clubs could not end up grouping together as a club. They were all spread out.
Yeah.
That was the biggest complaint I heard.
I heard that complaint as well, because if you come to these shows enough, you know where the shade is going to be and where the trees are going to be. So if you go out there early, because there were people who came at 7 o'clock in the morning and there were already blocked off spaces. So it's not our group, but it's still a lot of responsibility that should not be.
For the organization.
And the fellow that used to do it before, he's no longer. No. So
different management.
and we don't even have input with them. They make their event. They show up, do the porta potty, but they don't tell us what they're doing. They didn't say, well, we're blocking this off for our group. It's just when the people showed up, they were told that they could not be there. So that's another thing. Anything
Make
else?
anything on it?
Yeah, excuse me, please.
Did we make anything on it?
That's a question I would have for practically every event that we have. I don't know. Did we make anything on
They're
it?
supposed to be, they supposedly donate $200, and I don't go to the city, so I don't know.
Who pays for the porta potties? Who pays?
They do their own porta potty, they're self-sufficient.
Okay, so the whole event, the city got $200?
We haven't yet.
We haven't gotten $200
Not that I
yet.
know of.
Okay, so there again, there's a way we can either track an event that is either costing the city money, they're impacting on our city. I mean, I don't know what the handy way of the
What's your making?
gas station made. They probably made a killer. I don't know how we can get that out of it, but again, some of the vendors even that were there for the street vendors, I mean the food vendors, they didn't even mention that there's food at the vendors that are there every week that we've already got their licenses and whatnot. So they did not get, I think I saw a ranger taking around a menu for the barbecue people because nobody was coming over. And I guess the reason that he did it, because he had his car out there, the reason that he did it because they didn't even mention there was one vendor that they had, food vendor that was there, and that was all that they, so we didn't even get the overflow from that. It's just a piece of.
His prices were better, and the food was better, and what's on the park, vendors in the park.
Just any comments or any suggestions?
I got one.
Yes, you do, Cookie.
I've had this for a while. This should have been out today before we did this.
Okay, well, Cookie, you do know what we're doing, it's just a workshop, right? So we're not making.
I understand, Glenn and I've been doing this for 30 years.
All right, well,
You'll need a copy of the list for all these other lists that we've got.
Yeah, you got a few minutes.
You're already on the list. You can't get mine. That's Jim.
Now clarify it again, Jim, you said this is a workshop, and what did you want? workshop in terms of the public events?
It's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to
Well, I think it's
Yeah,
important.
I didn't say that they weren't allowed to speak, but you are allowed to get through your discussion.
I want to keep
and
it policy.
open it up when-
Okay.
If you choose to.
All right, so,
I had Karen make this list up. So at least, believe it or not, on this list is over 30 different activities that is happening. And like Roger said, some of them are, with the town, some of them are, but these are all the activities that happens during the year, okay? Certain people I gotta give them to here.
This would be what this coordinator would be coordinating to make sure there's no overlap.
Yeah.
for those of you who don't have enough copies of it, I'll just read. You got the Market in the Park, the East Egg Hunt, 4th of July Parade celebration, as well as the fireworks.
Which one?
We have the Christmas tree lighting, Christmas parade, city cleanup, and city cleanup, the turkey shoot, trunk or treat, September 11th, 9/11 ceremonies, Veterans Day ceremonies, Christmas Eve, that's the 5K, Strawberry Festival, the April Car Show. There's another one coming up on Memorial Day. Did we get that on the books?
Yes.
Okay, so that was something that was great. We have a second, we have a yard sale. We have a city yard sale. We have another 5K. We have the Reach Across America, cemetery reach. One that's not down here, which I think is one that's been overlooked, is the one that's been overlooked has been the Super Memorial cleanup on Memorial Day for the last 50 years or more. The African American community will go out to Super Memorial. On a couple of the years, we had a participation from the Methodist Church that came over, and they also helped us. So that is an event. I would say that we have been, I would say, lacking in not putting that event on. Arbor Day.
We need to get that into the city so it becomes a city event. Now it's a county.
Thanks for that. He just opened up a can of worms, yeah. It is not a city event because the city of Lake County did not annex their property into the city. And all of the African Americans that are buried there, they were buried there because they could not be buried in the cemeteries here in Lake Helen. And until the I-4 part was cut and it left the cemetery on the other side of I-4, which was in the county, basically, the city of Lake Helen decided that they did not need to bring it into the city. And that's where we are right now.
Can I answer that process for Brian? Was that a city event? Or is it an event?
It's an event, it's like the city yard, so it's an event that happens in the city.
Got it. I mean,
But it's not a city event.
It's a citizen
But
event.
it is an
It's a
event.
citizen event.
So all of these are not city events.
No, they're just events that occur in the city.
Right. Yes, Kelly, you have a hand up?
Needs to be put in.
I was speaking with Jen when I had handed in that paperwork for the 5K from last year for the Stress Buster. And today I was trying to get some direction on which playground we are gearing towards for the 5K. Last 2 years were Melissa Park. I think we still need to direct our focus on Melissa Park, or if we're going back to Blake to work on something. I just need to know that so I can put that into the information so that the participants are very clear on what the money is going for. So this is something for the workshop if you guys want to discuss, so I can get that information out there. We already have participants registered, but I'd like to update that information.
Okay. And that would be something that would probably be on
We approved something for both parks, and it's a basketball court, so that can be put under the
There was already funding from the last one and the last two to cover the basketball courts, except for $1,000.
You wanted to know what projects were being done.
I'm not asking what's being done, I'm asking for what we want to project 2024 on. If we want to project it for additional stuff at Melissa Park, for the playground in the park, or if we want to move to putting a new park over at Mitchell, or?
I can agree with that, because even when you are marketing a race, if you have a market target, and if the target is to do playgrounds or whatever, then that could also go as part of your literature.
That's correct.
Am I understanding that
Yeah,
correctly?
you're correct. It doesn't need to be a vote, it just needs to be a consensus that you can discuss, so that way I can get that paperwork out, because it's already been a vote for me to do that 5K, to handle it, as I have before. So this year I'm coming and I'm asking, where do you want the money directed to? Where do you see that? So if you guys can have that discussion.
What's your timetable? What makes it work for you that you now know that this is where it's going? So it gives us an idea to start working for
The
it.
sooner the better. I've been waiting for this workshop just for that reason.
Okay, so this is for the December,
But I cannot go out and look for sponsorships until I
till you
have.
get that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, Nancy?
While we're talking about the basketball courts, and I know we had talked about getting bids for Melissa Park and then Blake, I'm just curious, is Ivy Hahn helping pay for any of the basketball court at Blake? I know they utilize it daily with their PE classes. So I don't know if any of that has ever been brought into consideration for, their use of the park.
They were paying $500 a month during the school year months.
They still are.
Are they?
$6,000 a year. That was part of the deal that we had with the Ivy Hahn, because they used the bond that the city provided, and in that bond, one thing, they don't have a playground. They don't have a gymnasium, so they would be operating our playground, but they will also be using our bathroom. So to compensate the city, that they had a contract that would be $500 a month. They still paying that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's $6,000.
Just during the school year, yeah.
Sorry?
During the school year.
Yeah, during the school year. Oh, I'm saying, okay, then it takes it less than $6,000. School year's out, okay. Who else has anything? Yes, Kirby?
I have a question, and I gotta ask that young lady over there too. This 5K race, Melissa Park's okay, but it's Ohio Avenue, it's one street. Now, she's run this thing all this time. I think it should stay where it's at, because you got the room, but not only that.
They're not moving it, Cookie, they just want to know where you want to put the money to.
Yeah, we're just looking for where to
Oh, I
put the
thought you
money.
were talking about where it should stay where it's at because of.
No, where we're raising where the money we raise, where are we directing it?
All right, I'm just being reminded that we have a topic that we're speaking about, which is the event coordinator. And the event coordinator does touch all of those things, but that's the outer part of it. But the event coordinator is why we're here, and we need to, if you want to lead on that.
Well, to carry that through, while Kelly's asked a valid question, that's something you all need to think about, and then that's something you can vote on at a commission meeting, somewhere in the work session in terms of that. So what I've got so far, and Roxanne double check, was job description. And then is the job description based on the list that Mr. Allen provided, where we can tie in the number of events. Again, not all city. We should star those and ask what are actually city events, but facts, so that someone looking at a job description would know what your responsibility are in reference to that list. Now, the list can change because events can come and go, based on demand. So, with the job description, what's your next step? You want us to bring that back, and then based on that description, are you going to have a discussion on whether that's a contracted position? Is it a part-time position? And then at what rate are we going to compensate?
Now, I would think that the closest event that has the most impact right now is the 4th of July, the parade, the fireworks. So we already have a contract for the fireworks. Is there anything else that needs to be done for the 4th of July?
Well, actually, we have a meeting tomorrow. Here.
Okay. Y'all have that meeting tomorrow?
Staff to make sure that everything's.
Okay, so then that takes care of that.
Can I interject one thing?
Sure.
Has anybody thought about rentals for Hopkins Hall and all them also, maybe taking care of that as part of the job? Or would that still lay with the girls at City Hall? I mean, if maybe you look into it, maybe a possibility to have that too, so that one person coordinates all the our buildings and stuff too. Just a thought.
Yeah, it looks like letter K on Exhibit A coordinates with staff who manages reservations for use of city facilities, including City Hall, public bathrooms, Hopkins Hall, Blake Park, etc. There's a whole bunch.
So that make them responsible instead of the girls in the office. Because then they do something and they don't know about it. You've got to rent it out and not rent it out.
So do we have a calendar in office? Yeah. Okay.
So I have a thought that I wanted to put out there. We have some of the events that are listed on this list here are not city events, but they are events that happen within the city, like the citywide yard sale. We've got some of the league things in here.
I separated them out just secret.
Right, but I think for purposes of this job, or contractor, in my suggestion, what if we pay the city events at one rate, and where they're just coordinating as the liaison between where the work is being done predominantly by an external party, the rate could be reduced.
And if that coordinator would be like an overseer of it?
Right, so they would be the liaison between the city, for example, coordinating with staff about if there's restrooms that need to be, et cetera, if they need suggestions on what radio stations to put their ads out on it, just those little things that really, it's only going to take them a small amount of time to handle, whereas something like 4th of July or Christmas parade, those things take a lot more effort. And it's just a suggestion, I'm just talking it through, but I mean, it seems one way that we could kind of mitigate some of the cost and still have someone that's kind of the point person that can take all these events that are happening within the city, that, Massey James and Boys and Girls, whoever has an event in GEMS, and put them all together.
Do we have the idea of having a website for the events coordinators, so that the website would be at some point, you could either sign up for, register for, pay your fee for, and the events coordinator, so the city have an events page?
There is.
Everybody?
You have to expand.
Would be
It needs to be expanded.
expanded to accommodate.
Like what a lot of other cities that I go to and everything, when you hit their calendar and everything, they have like Stress Buster 5K. Well, it's usually highlighted in blue, which means it's linked to something. So you click on it and the whole flyer comes up about times, dates, who you register with and everything else. We need to do that with our calendar so that when we put an event on the calendar, it clicks up and that information comes to them.
And that is probably more efficient than even an individual that has to be running around trying to meet everybody to catch up with the event.
Well, the event coordinator still needs to coordinate that form to make sure.
It would be a
the person
tool,
has
it would be a
everything.
tool for the event coordinator that could probably expand what they do, because we don't have that right now. Right now, what we're working with is what I'm looking at. What we could do, well, that's where we want to go. But right now, we don't have any event page, we don't have, a page that, like Russ spoke about that, we can, you can go up on our city's website, that city website, you see listing of events. And, well, even for the Stress Buster, the company, the organization, they have other events that they do, so that you can register for another event that they are making.
Usually there's a link on the link, when you link on, pull up the flyer, there'll be a link on the flyer to theirs.
So that, I
To
would,
their calendar.
I would also say that, if that would be something that an event coordinator would have, at least that skill set, that they can be able to navigate themselves.
Or coordinate with somebody that has that skill set.
Because that's your good point.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
If I can comment on Heather's thought process there, and I think she's on to a good idea in reference to the different rate structure. On the portion that are non-city events, we could possibly be looking at the special event application and actually adding a fee. That almost covers them.
So,
That specific time that they spend on that. So the idea of separating those out is, I mean, actually, it's a good idea. It just may be a way that we actually pass on that cost. And I'll give an example. You won't see it at the May meeting, but at the June meeting, we'll be bringing you two fees to approve. One is a $5,000 deposit, and the other is a $2,500. And these would be developers would put on pay. And so that way, when we have to get the planner, the engineer, and the attorney, those costs come out of their money, not taxpayer money. And if they spend more than $5,000, we stop work, we tell them to replenish that and whatever. So it's a little bit off track, but giving an idea on how we're trying to put some things in place to where the taxpayers are not subsidizing, like in development in this case. But on this aspect here, if we used your scenario of two different structures, whatever that is, then we could potentially look at just updating and revising this application for a non-city event. There'd be an added fee for administrative costs. That can offset that.
Clarification on this, so some of these events will actually be looking to get an event coordinator to help with all of them. However, some of them are being presented to the city and to the public from 501c3s who are fundraisers that typically do their fundraisers, do their event, and then put their monies into their coffers. Is that what we're saying, that then the city will be paying for an event coordinator to help with a 501c3?
That's not how I see it. I know we think of a nonprofit as not making money. They pay staff, they pay people the way every other organization does. It's just the way they report to the IRS is the only difference. So if a nonprofit wants to come into Lake Helen and do a fundraiser, if there's any cost to the city, that should still be offset. That should be part of their overall expense to them. Now, the commission can waive fees, for certain organizations. Scott's told you that. You can waive fees if you believe whatever that organization is doing is to the overall better good for the citizens of Lake Helen. There's some advantage. But if they're just using your community as a location for their fundraiser, and if it's requiring city staff time to help with routes and things of that nature, then we would charge them city costs just as if they have their own costs.
That's why I was headed,
Yeah.
Well,
because
really, I think the most that the event coordinator's gonna do on those items is just make sure there's nothing else planned for that day, kind of keep the calendar as to what's happening.
Yeah.
Anything for what's planned doesn't.
And that their application is complete, it's gone through the various departments and everything.
Because there's some events that you can have all at the same time, and Karen is very good at doing that, because she has the market in the park, and they have the car show, and they're operating at the same time. She coordinates it so that they both work. And even though they're at the same time and in the same place, it gets coordinated. So, but then there's some of them, like the citywide yard sale, that goes on the same time as the Market in the Park, but the citywide yard sale is out in the city, and the Market in the Park's here. And it really, the people that's going through the yard sales and everything say, oh, let's see what they got in the flea market too. So they actually help each other. So, and that event, you know, there's sometimes where the events can coordinate together, and there's sometimes when you gotta have them separate. Like if there's a horse show going on and you have a strawberry festival that wants to go in on that date, yes, they know we already got an event in there on that day. That would be interference. That's what the coordinator would be taking care of.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I'm just thinking too, I don't think I expressed this before, but if we're paying per event, that would encourage this person to create more events. So.
I don't think that the one I'm thinking about needs encouragement to creative events. What's needed is encouragement for the commission to approve some of the events.
Well, you approve them, it's setting budgets for them, so that we know what it is that you're willing to ask your taxpayers to fund.
I think without having the position of events coordinator, the person that's doing what they're doing, they could be, I'm sure can be overworked and not as efficient as they might be if they had less work to do and additional assets to help that happen. Events with everybody wears out. So to be able to have an event structure that would actually be able to have that amount of cooperation from both the city, and so that we can know what we may need to not do, or maybe we need to know what we need more resources in. Right now, it happens in basically a vacuum, and at the end of the day, it works. So we made it, but looking forward, I think we're going to need, that's one of the aspects of the event coordinator. I think that's my perspective.
Well, none of my comments were made with a person in line for this position, so I didn't know it. You said that, Roger.
Well,
Yeah, we
think
think
about putting out for bid.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do need
Statute pretty much
to,
says that we should put
Right.
our jobs out for bid.
we do need to attract talent.
Yes, Nancy, I see your
Encourage
hand.
people to apply.
So I've done the citywide yard sale. It's something I created and brought to the city, and it is probably the third largest event the city has. Last year, we had over 4,000 people that came into the city during that time. Typically, well, historically, all of the fees have been waived for all the participants, and it's never, my husband and I have sponsored all of it. How is what you're doing right now going to impact my event that I do for the city? Because I think it brings such a positive for the city, the citizens. Everybody loves it. People come in and then leave. So it's a win-win for everybody. How is whatever you're doing today going to impact my event?
Well, like Jim said, we have the authority to waive fees for any event.
You would have
So
to,
just like before, just
You'd
like
have
we've
to
done
put out-
historically before.
you'd
Okay,
have to fill out a new event application, that's all.
that's fine.
Just coordinate that. into
Any more?
the calendar for the event.
I do. I have.
Yes, you had your hand up, I'm sorry.
Yes, I just have a question. You keep talking about the events coordinator. I know when I sat on as vice chairman of Park and Rec for many years here in Lake Helen, we didn't have an events coordinator that was working with us until Johnny came like the last year or two that I was there. What is the motivation going to be for this activities coordinator to get sponsors? If they're getting paid like money, a lot of money, or what is there going to be their motivation to go out and make these events bigger each year? Are they just going to stay the same that they are? Or should you bring to the Park and Rec where there's 5 or 6 more people going out and getting sponsors and volunteers to run this. I mean, 'cause this activity coordinator has to find these volunteers to run these events. Now, if you bring back Park and Rec, and the activity coordinator works with Park and Rec as a part-time position where it's not making the city pay all this money to an activities coordinator, when you can have 5 or 6 individuals volunteering for the city. I think it would save the city a lot more money, and I think that the events would be a lot bigger. Because since I've been off the board, the events haven't been as big, and everybody talks about it back in the day. I was on that board with those volunteers. And I don't see it, I've just seen it go downhill. I think you need to have a part-time activities director, and you need to bring back Park and Rec. And then, I know you're afraid of Park and Rec, but there is a Bible out there that you go by, and we went by it. And like Easter, we would have 4 months prior to Easter, this is what we do on this month. This is what we do on this month. This is what we do on this month. And then we also, when we got done with these events, we had 3 people that went over all the money, and then we would tell you guys how much that we made. We would, say what cost what, we gave you all that. And then that money went to you guys, although we had to go back in front of the commissioners and beg for the money to do the next event, which needs to be changed. We need to have our account, or the Park and Rec needs to have, so they know that money's there, that they worked for as a volunteer. But it would save the money, it would save the city a lot more money, and you would have more volunteers, and you'd have more people in Lake County stepping up wanting to do and get their endorphins.
I'm 100% agreeing with you. 100% agree with you, and from the point in time when I was on Parks and Rec, it did provide us that opportunity. What was taken out of the fabric of the events at Parks and Rec is when they removed Parks and Rec, and then they didn't replace it. The events and things went
But
on.
as a commissioner and mayor, you can bring that back.
Well, I'm saying as a commissioner, former commissioner, and a current mayor, I can tell you the benefits of having Parks and Rec, and what that brings to the table would also enhance some of what a event coordinator would do. Even if the event coordinator, the joke of the Parks and Rec was that anytime you became a board member of the Parks and Rec, you became the chairman of the Parks and Rec. That was the thing that they could do. Just because you just added on it.
Well, there wasn't very many chairmen from the time that I was on. The president and the chairman and vice chairman, we were the same people for many years.
Yeah, this was in 2006, 5, 6.
Well, that must have been right on. That's when Betty stepped down was when I came on.
Well,
Sean was my vice.
I would think that would be something that would also, it wasn't even on our agenda, it wasn't brought up in the discussion, but it's something that, as we look back, that Parks and Rec, whatever we needed to do, or what we didn't do, that caused it to be dismembered or dissolved, it needs to be addressed.
Also, when we did when we were on Park and Rec, like Melissa Park was my park. Each board member had their own park. Lori and I, we borrowed the stuff from Daytona State College, and we were talking about doing the basketball hoops and stuff. We did that. We went out there and painted it. We got the little rollers, people volunteered, and painted trash cans. We cleaned out that room. We begged the city to get the real bathroom in there and not a gray well, and it all worked. And we took care of each park, and the parks were taking care of them because you had a board member that took care of them. We don't need no full-time activities director. We need to bring back Park and Rec and give it back to the residents of Lake Common. And it's gonna get bigger and better. All the games and prizes that we had at 4th of July, the Easter egg hunt, we had donut eating contests, cupcake eating contests. We had where you could dye your own eggs for kids that actually had never dyed an egg before. And it was all free. Because we did sponsors and we raised money all year long to put that off. And on 4th of July, we would have $5 wristbands, but we would have prizes and games and bouncy houses and everything to give back to the kids. And the watermelon eating contest, that was all volunteers, guys. It was the city. Bring it back. The people want it.
I think as we have a new city administrator that was all absent before he got here, but it might be beneficial to have a conversation with him.
Well, I don't even live in this city.
Well,
I don't even live in this city.
But you do.
I'm just very passionate, and and I volunteer a lot in the city. I volunteered over 25 years in the city. I love Lake Helen.
Ranger James would echo your same thing, same information to me, but he won't come before they get to push.
He won't what?
He won't come before us to push it as hard as you do.
I bet if I went to Ranger's store right now, I call him Uncle James. If I went to his store right now, I bet you he would step up on Park and Rec. And if you guys would stop where it's somebody outside, like when I said, they wanted me to be vice chairman, or be chairman, and I said, no, let Ranger do it because I hadn't moved, I left the bad relationship and moved out of the city. I said, but I'll stay as vice chairman. But I had to go in front of you guys, the commissioners, and you guys went ahead and said that I could stay and be vice chairman. But as soon as I stepped down a year or two later, you guys changed it where you had to live in the city to volunteer. And Mayor Buddy said, I don't care if somebody comes from Altamont, if they want to volunteer, we need volunteers. If they love my city, that's very welcome. But if you take it back to that, I'll go back on Park and Rec.
That's the benefit of, as a city commission, each city commission basically can create a new event or a new status. When they did remove Parks and Rec, it had to do with, what was that? Sunshine. Right, so Sunshine became.
Well, that was because Parks and Recs had changed to playground committee, and then.
No.
Scott,
City
let me finish the way I understand it first, and then everybody can put their input in. The way I understood it occurred is a change from the playground, from the Parks and Recs, when they got disbanded, use of the guide and everything that Ranger James had. And then they wanted to do some playground equipment, so they created a playground committee that went out and did a bunch of funds and events and everything to raise funds for the playground. And then when that playground got done, they started going to the other one, and then it started morphing with different people and everything else, and got embedded into coordinating, going through and finding out what all the parks needed to enhance the parks and make them better. And then it fell apart because of politics.
That's probably the most succinct description of Parks and Recs over the period of time that, I've left it. But this is not a, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I'm not going to speak for Scott, he's your attorney, but I can probably understand the advice he gave is, first of all, if you were appointing a board, okay, and if the board is to advise you, then they're subject to sunshine. They can't meet any different than anybody else. They have to post their meetings and people can point in because they're voting on recommendations to come back. They don't make the final decision, but they're still subject to those, just like the historical board, the PLDRC, they're public. So if you're appointing a Parks and Rec committee and you're advising, or their role is to advise you on how to enhance, improve, and what you should do with your parks, then they have to run under sunshine.
Would they have to follow Form 1 also? Because I know the Historic Preservation Board, or the PLDRC does.
Yeah, that might be a question for Scott, because that
It's a volunteer.
I mean, some advisory.
So is that?
It's volunteer, it's just like being shoestrings.
But so are all of the other boards, but they still have to
One of the
follow.
issues that came up with the.
But as long as they go by the bylaws.
One at a time.
One of the issues that came up with the committees was that they can't work any event together because it would violate the sunshine. And that defeats the whole purpose of what she's talking about and how they ran it in the past. Because they would work together at the event, but then legal says, no, they can't work together at the event because it would violate sunshine. They might talk about something that's going, well, they're supposed to get together to talk about things that are wrong for us.
Well, after they put down the Parks and Recreation Board is when the playground committee was formed. And it wasn't a board, it was a committee.
Exactly.
And before that, we had an event committee, which was asked to get their own insurance.
It was still attended by the city clerk. and the city
Whatever,
administrator.
whatever we are at right now, Sunshine is, I just wrote this down, is a necessary inconvenience. It's a necessary inconvenience. We would like to operate with more flexibility, but when Sunshine says you have not complied with Sunshine, you can be charged with an ethics complaint that becomes now monetary. And that's just,
Is that because you're saying it's a volunteer position?
no, I'm saying that Sunshine requires that because this is like it's a meeting right now, it's the commissioners are here, and everything that we're gonna talk about today, we didn't get a chance to talk about it before we got here. It would be a violation. So
But how are the other cities doing Park and Rec?
same, well, how they doing Parks and Rec, I don't know, but I know that they're bound by the law.
They're all because
Because
they're a Parks and Recs department, they're employees.
Okay.
Employees don't have to meet the sunshine requirement.
But wouldn't it be cheaper for the city even to pay like you're talking about $60,000, 6 board members, and that's like 6 powerful people that can do things for $10,000 a piece on a part-time position?
Well, we don't have 60,000 anymore, because that was allocated last year. So it's getting, and that pot is getting smaller by the minute, so we're still stuck with, coming up with the events coordinator and or somewhere along the line. And I don't know, I don't have the particulars of when it was disbanded, and that would be something that I think our attorney would be giving us direction as to where we stand with that, how we can do it, why we didn't continue it, and what is the exposure to the city. Because anything that the city violates in terms of Sunshine, it reflects on our city. And again, the word that I use, it's monetary. It is monetary. If you violate Sunshine, then it can become a very costly situation. So I think and I'm not sure, and again, my head is kind of, when we disbanded, I know the conversation was about basically Sunshine issues. And I didn't follow it, I didn't track it, but that was the reason, overarching reason why they disbanded it.
Right.
And now, where we are now, we're at a different place, we got a different commission, we might have different needs that we could either structure it so they can be workable.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that.
Thank you.
I'm good on that, Robert.
Did I give this back to Jim?
No, and if I would just add on that, with the young lady, definitely not argumentative, but everyone who serves on a board is a volunteer. So there is no distinction. So if you're a volunteer, but you're serving on a city board, you're subject to state law. Okay, so the people on the LDRC are volunteers. The people on the Historical Commission, they're volunteers. They've chosen to be appointed. They could tell the mayor and commission they're not interested. But, so when you say volunteers, if you're still appointed by the commission and you're doing things for the commission involving Parks and Rec in Lake Helen as an extension of the commission, you will be subject to the sunshine violation, sunshine laws. And it doesn't mean you can't do your work, you just have to do it
Abide by
in
rules.
public. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, the reason that once a year we go to an ethics class, I don't remember the year that it came into effect. It came into effect after I was on the commission. But with the ethics, annually you go through 3 hours of training, and some of the things that don't really make sense, you would think, well, why would I have to do that? Why can't I get in a bus and go somewhere with 2 commissioners in a car to get out at an event, and then somebody standing there and say, oh, they must have been talking about something that was under sunshine. And it has happened. And there's been lawsuits on that. I mean, prevail, thank goodness, but when you work in this state system, this is the system.
And Florida's one of the most restricted ones on the sunshine. Probably because we got too much sunshine.
We got it too.
Back on the events coordinator, resource you could probably look at is contacting the League of Cities and finding out what cities have job descriptions already for event coordinators or event planners.
In fact, what I can do on that, Roger, is being a member of the Volusia City County Managers Association, you know, there's maybe 11 people, I can shoot an email out just in one day and ask each one of those cities what do they have, how many people, and samples, copies of their. One thing in government, I mean, in school, you get in trouble for plagiarism. In government, it's the best thing you can do is plagiarize, because somebody else has done it, somebody else has seen it, and so instead of reinventing it, let's go and see what we can do, and then you tweak it to fit what you need there. So
There is a web out there that picks up when you plagiarize as well. There is a web out there that picks up if you plagiarize.
They capture kids.
Well, yes, my wife's a high school English teacher, and so
I don't know.
she has a program, you know, that AI has generated a.
You're gonna do a job description, but you're gonna do a contract too, right?
Well,
Job description, step one.
yeah, we're working, we're not even there yet, but
I just wanna make sure.
yeah, but we are.
We'll decide if we're going to hire somebody or if we're
Yeah,
going
you
to contract.
can figure out what it is, sponsors.
This basically is being birthed as we're speaking.
Okay.
We got a new city administrator that had no history back with that in terms of what happened here. We have members of our board here that you know, Ann is around those. So there's things that we can bring to the table, but we don't get we don't get a running start. We got to start at scratch and work our way back up. Anything else, Jim?
No, Mayor, I think let me recap.
Freudian slip.
Job description. I'll reach out, and Roxanne and I will reach out to the other cities in Volusia County, and then once the job descriptions comes back, and you all have an opportunity to review that, then the next step of the discussion is, would it be contract? You know, would it be part-time? If it's contract, what's that amount? If it's part-time, what's that salary? Heather's idea, then whether it's contract or salary, would there be a rate for city events, and then would there be a rate for non-city events? And then secondary to this, and this is something separate, then when that's said and done, you all may want to have a discussion on whether or not there is value of bringing back a Parks and Rec committee with the guise of being almost an extension of or a partner with this special events person. But let's deal with the first list of items that are up there, get you guys the job description, and then based on that description, we'll even try to do our survey. We'll also ask for what's being paid, hourly rate, and whatever, so that we're not just trying to pick a number out of the air. We'll be trying to do something that's comparing apples to apples. Did I get a summary in the sense of what you got? Okay. Roxanne? Okay.
When we do those apples to apples, can we do from cities that are comparable to our city? Don't compare us to DeBerry that has all these parks and has unlimited amount of funds. Deltona.
Or something.
We compare to Oak Hill. Do they have a park? Do they have an events coordinator? Okay.
There's only 3 of them that's comparable to us. That's Oak Hill, Pearson.
Well, and that's who we should. That's who we should be. We shouldn't be going against Celebration or DeBerry, Ponce Inlet, multi-million-dollar condos. I mean, this is Lake Helen, and I agree with Heather. This should be a part-time position.
I understand your point, but from a validated standpoint, to see the range of where they're at and where they're going, it's still beneficial to us to see, you know, how extensive it is in DeBerry to how it's not extensive in Oak Hill. So, I mean, that information isn't going to hurt us in terms of they're going to set a rate based on what Lake Helen wants to pay. But from a survey standpoint, if I only narrow it to 3 cities and they don't have a special events coordinator, I don't have any information, he can come back with some kind of basis.
Maybe
Some
I'll
of them's
start
got
using
sports and
Casey
all
Scout
versus no
Based
events.
on jobs, so you can know which staffs
I'm sorry,
based on other cities.
I don't know, the lady that put me in, I comment on
I said
that.
some of the other cities have sports versus what our events are. They go to the ball fields and they have sponsorships and team memberships fees. We have a ball field.
Okay?
Okay, I guess the closest thing to, I call it the closest thing to money that we have right now, in terms of events, it's not just my slogan. We got Labor Day coming up, that's in September, of course. We have 4th of July parade, we have the fireworks. In September also, there's the 9/11 ceremony. The Memorial, we got a Memorial Day car show. When is the yard sale? October, that's in the end of the year. We have the Market Park every Saturday. So my point is that while we're in the process of coming up with this event, let us also focus on the next things to happen. And the closest thing to happening are these 4th of July, Memorial Day and 4th of July. And we might add that Memorial Day, I say, to a memorial. Any other questions, any other comments?
On the list that Cookie gave us, the one that lists Legion Yard Sale, that's our fall festival, that's our dinner, band, and all that, it's not a yard sale.
My question that did come up in the discussion, instead of having a Memorial Day in front of City Hall, why would it not be feasible to have it at the Legion Center?
We have Memorial Day at the car show.
At the car show? I think we had the Flag Day. They had.
We have an event that that we put on at the car show at the mid-time, flag presentation, and if they still do it, a flag by I think they're called the Confederate Air Force out of Fort Orange or somewhere.
They do that on
a flyover on Memorial Day.
Memorial Day?
Now, the other ceremonies, Veterans Day, 9/11 and so on, we do it at City Hall instead of at the Legion because we don't have as much front yard as you got here.
Mm-hmm.
So to have the people sit there, we have to shut down Casadega Road for having people to be able to sit there.
Yeah, but the last couple of events, they weren't that populated. Most of the people there were kids that came from Ivy Hahn.
Also wasn't advertised very well.
Yeah, it's not advertised very well.
Yeah. Okay. Question, the statement was it wasn't advertised very well. But those are very important events that my connection with the veterans, since you have that, and even if it, I'm just maybe thinking out, off the top of the head, even if we close off the street to have the event next to the gas station.
Well, we got one at 80 on the list, or I think it's law enforcement Memorial Day coming.
Well, I think we're going to kick this can as far down the road as we can get.
Yeah, to get the next step is job description and then some idea of trying to come up with as the resident had said, not necessarily comparing us to Volusia County or to Lyon, but still getting some idea of what that job description entails, and at least what they're paying, so at least we kind of come up with something that's marketable. Because you could say we're not one of those, but you still got to remember, we still compete for employees in the same marketplace. And while it doesn't have to be a dollar for dollar salary, people in Lake Helen wear more hats than one. And give an example, as I learned, I'm a planner, I'm the clerk,
the finance director and the city administrator. Okay, that's fine, that's what we do, and most of my peers in Lake County. Somebody else.
I think that was one of the things that's on the job description.
So I'm saying, so we're all used to, and, you know, I think as I meet with staff and Eric and Debbie and Roxanne, any given day, we have a different hat on, so I mean, so I recognize, you know, that we don't match up apple for apple, but we can still get some kind of idea.
Okay,
And who's wearing the emergency manager hat then? You didn't have that.
Can we have a break in this action before we go into the special?
You can actually adjourn this.
This meeting is now adjourned. The next meeting will start at 8 o'clock.
I'll see if I can come back.
Oh, I know.
Events coordinator should have I'm talking about the events.
What we do is it's like patchwork. Every once in a while, because ours goes like this, so now they're cutting it out, so they put them square, and they bring them like this. It took them all day to do three, a couple corners and stuff, so two guys working their butts off, and the son's trying to get that done. This is all kind of concrete, getting the asphalt up, you know, getting the asphalt up. It was hot. It's hot right now. I'm working on the whole city, everywhere. I was trying to, we have a place on Summit Avenue, whenever you turn on the Summit from Maine, keeps etching out right there, the sign in there. We're gonna pour that there. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have them give me I want him to give me prices that I want, because you're the one that called in right now. You called it out here. I want him to give me a price to do that, so if I have to get a short one, can I work it into that, instead of losing a short one?
We were doing YouTube.
Or nothing.
We were streaming the
Get it there.
video.
I've gotten a budget, when you work something in,
Is
all the sidewalks, and here we'll do this, and let them, what do you want to rate? I've got a 5-year CIP plan for everything. That's coming up, that's another workshop. Yeah.
The more I think about it, they should do it. Across the river.
They never put it in, we'll never get it.
Eventually,
Okay, think about this, think about the
you
guy.
can excuse people in some days.
Yeah, think about the guy in Lemon, right? He's got to go right there, just go down right in the house.
Have a backyard over there.
Yeah, you use that one. You'll never get a fire.
You don't have a pop-up shirt on. You got an Amanda shirt on.
Yeah, it'll never happen.
But he was talking that, the way the road was laid out,
And a pop-up.
moving on this side, to this side.
And there's only,
And unless he donates some of his land.
we do it on New York, the county goes that way. But there is not enough money on your side, the way you're doing it, because the trees are in the way. So you're gonna have, which looks good to go like that anyway, but anytime we go around the trees, they're gonna destroy
I was
it.
around that, but it was kind of like a vague.
It's just a matter of time, it's gonna pick it up, it's gonna move it, it's gonna destroy it. So you have to figure out.
Oh, you just put a big camp moon around it.
Yeah,
That way, when you're friendly,
yeah, exactly.
it's still pretty wrong.
Now they repeat the measure.
There'll be nothing better.
You know, we got a lot of roads over there. I mean, the guy in the corner, he's got his house on the roof. And then he had a barn that was put up down the street.
That's almost the whole thing for sidewalk, right? I don't know.
think he did, but he already got a barn back there.
Yeah, I don't know.
You gotta
I wanna see the sidewalk go all the way from Lakeview, all the way around the lake, all the way around the road. You know, and, because people, we have a lot of people. walk.
Yeah.
I walk. A lot of people walk. You want to be safe. And not only-
People walk there, oh my God.
I can't believe it did not have that type of event in the See, we own it. On the lakeside, we own that lake. All the way to West Virginia. We own it. We got a survey. That's ours. That's where your sidewalk meet and get rid of the trees you see come around the corner.
So she's on the right side.
Yeah, the lakeside, we own it.
Elevated sidewalk.
Yeah, well, where we're at right there in front of Mr. King's, we should do the, pier one. Have it come from there and then drop down and go there. That would look really nice. See the location? You're walking in. That's my intention. They actually have that. It is, it's exactly what the original plan was. We're seeing it.
Utilize that. What I don't know is if they actually, they do things to help with payments or whatever. And whatever, I mean, if there's
I tried to look through the code. I couldn't find it.
yeah, that's like, usually an act of need. So it's being utilized by like a travel team. It's like, I know they work with Ricky and Howard.
Stuff to get it done. Yes, it's in the ordinance.
The payment policy about all that will be available.
Makes people jump through the phone. Building a home. Gateway for
Think about the road, you have to the road every time they go on that road. All the time. All the time. Just tear it up.
I didn't see the code, now that you say
see that, I know they talked before. Probably city limits. There is
Well, it was great of us that
Before the meeting, Frank,
I swear to God, they would use every excuse to get wrong. I forbid my husband, Jason. He got in enough trouble without me. God, that's way out.
one more minute.
I found that contract with the American Legion started a community center in Lake Park, in the city for $1 a year. And I think the community center was planned as that.
I'm not going to need. I'm not complaining about the way the park is. Got some 12-foot tall.
No,
We own the show.
we're all here, we're all pledged out.
They need to be. Well, they said it's been taken care of. Know that. They were done after last week. I heard that. Zachary wasn't in May. She didn't do that. Somebody on the Facebook page asked.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, they didn't say what the question.
Okay, let's get back into begin our next meeting. Actually,
To cover the headaches from this.
As we get.
Alright. Is it on? Okay, we're having a special meeting, and I call a special meeting. One of the things that I learned is mayor, which I haven't ever had to do before as a city commissioner, the mayor can call a special meeting. And in an event where a mayor doesn't call a special meeting, then 3 or more commissioners can call a meeting. I'm calling this special meeting today because of, mostly because of what wound up on the Facebook page. And so it moved me to decide that I think we needed to have a little transparency. I received an email, well actually it was a copy of the Facebook page, and it had, I didn't make copies of that, Congressman Corey Mills came to the city, visited the city, and he had a beautiful bus outside, and my phone started ringing, what's going on at City Hall? There's a congressman there. So I didn't know. So I said, you know, whatever it is, it'll work itself out. And then I got a Facebook page where Commissioner Donato had, I'm not even going to read it, because I can't find it. That's the only thing I can read it. But what it resulted in, the picture that had the city employees along with the congressman and Ms. D, it was a question that people were asking me, why are all of the city workers in City Hall doing the business day? Was it on the clock? Was it someone that was was it their lunch hour? I didn't have questions, I didn't answer to those questions. So I did speak to our city administrator. And the reason that we're here is because, not to throw stones at people, but to give some transparency and to give some insight where there is none. To try to give some where there is none. Now, I'm going to read something here. The city of Lake Helen has been, and this is 10 years old, you probably heard it a dozen times. The city of Lake Helen has long been considered a unique in both its character and in its politics. At the city's inception, the founders made sure that the organizational flow chart clearly showed that we, the people, were the top of that chart, so that the people who determined how we would be governed and the people who chose the commission form of government. We're not a council form of government, we're a commission form of government. At the time, the power of the city commission rested in the office of the mayor, otherwise known as a strong mayor form of government. But around 1996-97, the commission opted to convert to a weak mayor form of government. This meant that the mayor would chair the city commission meetings. He or she could not bring motions to the floor, nor could he or she second any motions brought forward. And his vote was to be used as a tiebreaker between the 4 commissioners. In this manner, the responsibility of running the city, Lake Helen, rested solely on the shoulders of the city commission. This included the hiring and firing of employees, the paying of bills, creation and enforcement of city ordinances. At that time, our commissioners actually ran various departments, such as Public Works, the Fire Department, the City Marshal, and City Hall. However, because of the demands of the local government were becoming more technical in the nature, the commission moved to contractually employ a part-time professional city manager. To accomplish this effort, it wasn't long before the commission came to realize that the services being performed by a part-time manager were both financially and productively beneficial. So the commission moved to create a permanent position that could professionally guide the commission to address the needs of our growing city. So they sought to implement a position of a city manager. In order for this to be brought about, the day-to-day running of the city Helen government it would take it out of the hands of the city commission and place it in the hands of the city manager. And this would require a ballot amendment. It was a city referendum that failed. So in November of 1999, the referendum was placed on the ballot, and it was narrowly defeated by a vote of the people who said no to the idea of having a Lake Helen run by a city manager. Undeterred, the city commission then looked at another approach to professionalize city governance. And it moved to create a position that would be under the city's commission. It would serve at the pleasure of the commission. Now I'm going to hesitate right there. As a commission form of government, having a city administrator who serves at the pleasure of the commission, we don't have a meeting if we don't have 3 commissioners to make a quorum. That's not a commission. When we have a quorum and we have a meeting, once we have a meeting, then we can vote with the majority vote. 3 votes carry the vote. No one commissioner can make a decision outside of the responsibility of the other 2 commissioners that will vote in their favor. So, getting to this point. The creation of the commission was fulfilled their duties under the charter, while it would serve the will of the people. I keep going back to the will of the people. The will of the people said that they wanted to have a form of government, that they were at the top of the food chain, and that they were not having a manager, and the manager did not tell the city workers what to do. The city administrator tells the city workers what to do. The city administrator cannot unilaterally on his own self tell the city workers what to do. Likewise, as city commissioners, we don't have the authority to speak to the city administrator, speak to the staff. I can't call Ricky up and tell him you need to start fixing a hole over here on one side of the street. I can give him information that might be something to be looked at, but ultimately it's going to be the responsibility of the city administrator. Same thing, even though I've got law enforcement background, although it's corrections, I don't get the chance to tell our city chief, listen, you know, you got some activities over here, you need to look into it. The police chief takes care of that. The administrator would be working in conjunction with the administrator, with the police chief, and with Public Works. On this particular issue, the day that Corey Mills came into the city and my phone lit up and people started putting things on Facebook, I decided to write a letter to the city administrator because he is the one that is responsible. So I read my letter. I said, Jim, based on the amount of phone calls that I received and upon reading these posts that were sent to me by more than one resident, I think it's necessary to schedule a special meeting to address these matters. Here are some of the matters I feel the commission needs to discuss. And these are questions that I put forward. I said, the fact that Lake Helen staff were being used in a staged political photo op. As far as ops go, the only person I saw there was Ms. D, and she was sitting on an empty row of chairs. I hope that didn't represent the citizens that were involved. And to me, it was not a good look. The questions that were raised to me was who was running the city while in the middle of the day, the entire city, Lake Helen City staff, including the police department, the Public Works director, Public Works, Ricky had taken off as a person time, so he was not even that in the group. And City Hall staff was in that so-called private meeting. The question I have was whose decision was it to direct the employees to attend the meeting? Now, to his credit, Jim answered each one of these, and instead of reading from my letter, which raised the questions, I read from the questions and answers. My question, I'm sorry.
You get the last page.
Thank you.
No,
Okay. Question. Whose decision was it to direct employees to attend this meeting? The answer. The request came from a commissioner. The email came from the city administrator to the employees. Was their presence there voluntary or made at the request of one or more commissioners? The answer. This was a direct request of a commissioner. Question. Was their presence there as a result of an independent decision by you as the city administrator? City administrator. The city administrator sent the invite, but under the request of a commissioner. Was this meeting on city time or was it an employee's lunch hour? Answer. It was on city time, 1 p.m. Why was Congressman Mills told that the mayor and other commissioners were uninvited to the city hall for that meeting? The answer. The city administrator was instructed this was a meeting being set up by one commissioner, and when I discussed about the other commissioners, I was told that it was not their meeting. So we did not post it as a public meeting, nor did I send out an email to the mayor or to the other commissioners. Question. Although Commissioner Denali asserted that this was not a public meeting, I completely disagree. Because anytime a United States Congressman pulls up into Lake Helen City Hall parking lot in a 35-foot bus with his name and picture plastered on it, it is not to have a private meeting. Answer. I agree. I was placed in an awkward position and I will not allow myself to be placed in that position again. Question. To me and many others, although Commissioner Denali emphasized that state laws were followed, quote, she disagreed, she disregards something that's very basic in politics. It's known as protocol. Answer. This was a discussion for the mayor. This is a discussion for the mayor and commission. And I will ensure that as a city administrator, I am not placed in this position again. This is not just a slight to the other members of the commission, but it shows a lack of respect to the Congressman Mills by not taking into consideration the time, the resources, and logistics that he had to dedicate to a so-called private meeting. All politics want to be viewed. They want to see people. They want to be seen by people. So I think it was a disrespect of him. I will let you know, and the commission discussion.
I'll let you and the commission.
I will let you and the commission discuss this private meeting. I never intended, nor do I want to be part of disrespecting any elected official or violating protocol. Maybe the most important workshop this commission can have is how to have a business meeting, protocol, how this form of government is to operate, how board can better work together and communicate and to keep personal politics and personalities out of the day-to-day administration of this city. I am at this juncture as a city commissioner. What I bring to the city is my experience and my reputation. And I really feel affront to have someone in public, on a public media, cite things that did not come out of my mouth, things that I don't agree with, that have nothing to do with me. Now, we live in a very litigious kind of environment now, and our former president was sued for basically, not sued, he was sued and found that he was found, what's that word he used? He was found liable. And the libel that he found was for the action that he committed. But not only did he have the responsibility or the result of the findings that he was liable, but then he began to defame the person. The definition of defamation can be legally binding on someone who either tells something that is not true, puts someone in a negative light, and I forget the third. That's more than enough. So I would just say that as it goes, what came as a result of the event that came here to the city, and I would just say that any attempt to bring attention to the city, it falls on all of us as city commissioners to reach out wherever we can. This is not a competition. I'm not running in competition with any of you. Whatever I do for this city benefits this city as a position that I hold. And I've been in this position only for 6 months, but I've been in this job for 15 years. So I know my job. So if all of you and the commissioners would learn whatever they might come from out of this, that they can learn from this, then I think it's better for the city. The word that I was told that as the mayor, I am basically the tip of the spear. I am not trying to be a congressman. I'm not trying to be a county council person. I'm not running for the House. I'm not running for the representative. I'm running for the city of Lake Helen. Everything that I brought to this table came from years of experience right here. I'm going to die in this city. I don't plan to be anywhere else. And I think that we also have the opportunity to have these three people right here. You have a city administrator that could probably be doing something else. He does not have to be here. His wife is an educator. She's going to be retiring soon. So, hey, the love of the city. Rick Mullins is here for the love of the city. Brandon, been here as an officer for the love of the city. For the love of God, can you try to find a way to work with each other without the negativity that I see on this? And I see you over there smiling, Nancy, but a lot of things that you put on
You should not bring me into your conversation.
I'm bringing this up because you have your name on these emails that have my name on it.
I have no email to you.
Well, you didn't have an email to me, but you put it in the public forum.
I have no problem discussing what I know
All right,
that you did in public
discussion
forum.
with you right now.
You brought it up.
Well, this is not a discussion. Just not a discussion.
Keep bringing
Okay?
up
The
people's
bottom
names.
line is what
You want to talk about
The
defame?
bottom line of what we're doing here is to be able to do the city work. Now, as far as I'm concerned, when I get finished, Commissioner, I am in complete agreement with bringing, I have to read something else, I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, I got it right here in my book. Ann Robbins.
Present.
I'm reading something with Ann. Because I served with Ann and because this incident, or this issue, it came up while I was on the commission, and Ann was very instrumental in bringing in Congressman Micah to this situation. And
Absolutely.
To bring it to the solution was, when they widened I-4, they were basically starting all the way down from, I guess, DeBerry, coming all the way through. And when they got to Lake Helen, they decided that they would just try to meet their deadline. And they just clear-cut everything. Our canopy of trees, our sound buffers, our sound areas, they just decimated them. So as a result of that, Ann Robbins was able, I'll read what she said, I have to use her words. We've always had good relationships with our congressmen for many years. As long ago as late 70s and 80s, when Bill Chappelli, our congressman, he was instrumental in getting the Golden Knights to perform when our very active JC's group held its annual spring carnival, which was held in Densville, where the woods of Lake Helen now is. Mr. Chappelle, at least on 2 occasions, had the United States Navy Band perform in the back steps of the bank of Lake Helen, west on Main Street. Before the 4th of July parade, when I was a city commissioner and vice mayor, I frequently went to meet with Congressman John Micah and held meetings nearby to Lake Helen. Together, we tried to, for at least 4 years, get a sound barrier wall along I-4. However, we did not meet the criteria for over $1 million spent of U.S. taxpayer dollars. What that meant is that they had to take into consideration for a mile for a decimal, they used the decimal. For the decimals that would be reduced by a wall, it had to be able to serve a certain number of people. And the decimals that those walls would put up, we did not have the population to adhere. So for 4 years, Ann was on that case. Now, the point I'm making here is that you win some, you lose some, but we all need to be in the game or we get nothing. We're all in this together. We're not competing with one another. The fact that, maybe there's an oversight, the point of this is, if the city administrator had not been instructed by the city commissioner not to invite other commissioners, we might have had more commissioners there and it would have been something that would have been fine and dandy. But the fact that the city administrator, who, as I just read, he serves at the pleasure of the commission, not as one commission. Certainly not as the mayor. As the mayor, I am just one vote, and as the charter reads, I am the tiebreaker in the vote. I don't make a motion, I don't second the motion, I just run the meeting. Whatever each one of you has to say with city administrator, it's between you and the city administrator. At no time would 2 commissioners want to be able to have a meeting with the city administrator. He should not be put in that position, unless it's in an open forum. So this has probably gotten more traction, Commissioner Donato, than it's probably worth. It didn't matter to me when I say, when I came to the meeting, I heard about the meeting, it was not an issue for me. But when the media, when I say the media, when the Facebook page started asking your mayor, why are these people here doing city business? And we talk very much about it. There's always a lot of emphasis on how much money we're trying to save. We just had an issue with our staff that took an hour for lunch and put on overtime. We had to address that. Now, who would get to pay for these city staff while they're here? We have a police officer, the police chief, the police officer, and our staff in the police department. They're sitting up in here. As far as an optics, and I'm just looking at it, the optics of it were what I kept getting calls on. Whoever was involved with it, that's another issue. But the optics that people kept saying, why are all these staff over here? And who's paying their salary? So I thought it was beneficial, and the not even Commissioner Down even had here. You're saying, cool. We never had a conversation about this, so whatever Nancy put on the Facebook about what I've done or said, and it was used. And another example that was used is that on last month when Bobby Luther and David Santiago came to City Hall. And I'm using that as a comparison. Bobby Luther happens to own a great deal of property in Lake Helen, especially the property that's on Main Street, which he's owned that for more than 20 years. It was said because of it was brought up that the Volusia Forever had if they had two willing sellers, which Bobby Luther's and his property was one of them, that they could be considered for Volusia Forever. When we asked Nancy about this, are you sure? Because David Santiago is a part of that, and she inferred that yes, he is. He is not going through with it. I said, how do you know? She said, just take my word.
That is not true. That is absolutely
All right,
not true.
well-
It's recorded and documented.
Okay, well, let me be as broad as I can. When I asked Nancy, are you sure about that? And she says, yes. So how do you know? And she was vague. And I'll leave it at that. So that being vague, it was brought up that David Santiago, as well as our largest property owner, was going to do a project that had something to do with a assisted living facility. Were you going to do that? And I called out to you guys hand up here? Okay, I'm gonna get to you. I'm sorry, Roger. So I called him to ask him, was he involved in a project? And he says, we have a project, we're not going with Volusia Forever. I said, well, I was under the impression that you were. This is on the 13th of February.
March.
March, thank you. By the evening of the 13th of March, Nancy basically said that Mayor Burton had a meeting in City Hall where he had the developers there, and he persuaded them to go against the project. I'm paraphrasing. And this was done at about 9 o'clock on the day of the 13th. So that meant that when we had our meeting on the 14th, it was full of people who were basically told that this was something that we were now discussing because Mayor Burton had pretty much put the kibosh to it because he had a meeting in City Hall with the property owner and his partner. The property owner was David Santiago. So my point is, this was not true. This was a basic lie. I didn't say anything about them having any idea. As a matter of fact, when they came into City Hall, what they came here with is that they had a project that's already in conception and they plan to go ahead with it. When our city administrator asked them, well, if you're going to go ahead with it, can you at least give us a notice of something? What was that? That they were withdrawing from Volusia Forever. And they gave us that on the 13th. There was nothing I could have said. I only met Bobby Luther twice in my life. I've spoken to him twice. The first time I met him was at City Hall. I was coming to City Hall, and he had a Maserati or some crazy car out front, and I just was curious as to who the owner of the car was. It happened to be Bobby Luther. He put up his signs on the property on Main Street and what's that, Summit. And so every year that I had an election, I would text him. I never spoke to him. I texted him and asked his permission, could I put my signs there? So every year that I ever ran a race, my signs were in his yard. Never had a conversation with him. So imagine my chagrin to find out that I had the ability, the persuasive ability, to tell a man who is playing fifth-dimensional chess with real estate that in the snap of a finger that he would get out of doing something that he had already made his mind to do. It's not the point that we had a meeting. It is not an equivalency meeting. It was a meeting with a property owner. Now, the question is, I'll stop here, Roger. The question that Bobby Luther and David Santiago had, if David Santiago, who sits on the county council, if this came before him, he would have had to recuse himself. wasn't an issue for him to recuse, because the beauty for Bobby Luther is that our comp plan spells out what he can do with that property. And any developer that comes into the city, they know our comp plan better than we do. So the comp plan said you can put an assisted living facility there. You don't have to ask for a variance. You don't have to even ask for permission. The fact that we did get a jump on asking him, are you going through with the project, and getting him into the city to meet our new city administrator, that was a plus for us in terms of we now know what you're doing. So now we're up to speed, and so that's why I'm a little bit passionate about this, because I hate to have my name thrown around that just, well, it just bothers me. I'll let Roger speak first, and then you can have to finish, okay? Yes, Roger.
From everything you've been speaking and everything, it started out with the meeting with Corey Mills and everything, then you got off on the track talking about the development and everything going on Main Street and stuff. Your whole expression and everything, your feelings are hurt, you wanted to get it aired out and everything, but...
My feelings are not hurt. My feelings are not hurt.
What are you wanting us to do with the issue with the Corey Mills meeting?
Okay.
I mean...
Let me answer that.
You got a lot of information and everything else.
All right, let me answer then. Let me answer for you. Let me answer for it. This is basically for Commissioner Donato. This is for her. I don't think, and again, that it would come up as an issue that you would direct your city administrator to do anything. And maybe not realizing that you don't have the authority to do it. It is against our charter to direct him. He directs the city employees. You told him, without any other outside information, that you told him to tell the city employees to show up here for a photo op. And that was where the issue may have gotten. If it would have stayed there, in terms of Roger, if it stayed there, it probably would have been a non-issue. But now I'm getting calls from citizens as to, they're asking those questions. These questions were brought up by the citizens.
In commission form of government and everything, and I've seen this happen at a lot of other cities and stuff like that. If a commissioner does something that the other commissioners feel is wrong and everything, they can do a vote of censorship, which is basically a slap on the hand that says, don't do it again. Is that what you're looking at from us, or what are you looking at from us?
All right, well, if you're getting upset about because I'm asking to have a meeting, then I'm not asking for anything, Roger. I'm just giving this as a pertinent information. In terms of we have a new city commissioner who is new to this position, new to the city, and new to this form of government as far as I know. So it might help us as a commission to avoid this problem or situation in the future. Now, as far as the censure, that makes no sense. That's idiotic. As far as the censure.
The cities use it left and right.
Well, it's not something, this is why this is a family meeting here.
Family?
This is a family meeting. This is what a special meeting is. We have the city commission here, we have our citizens here, we're getting it out. It's not out on the Facebook page. It's not being pumped around. It probably can get there, but I'd rather it get there from this place as opposed to being snatched out of thin air. So I'm thinking, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
No.
Yes.
You want to ask me a question?
No, I'd like to read an email. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, because there's a lot of pointing going on. I answered direct questions, but I sent this email today to the mayor and commission. I'm writing to inform you of a special meeting called by the mayor, scheduled for 8 p.m. tonight, April 30th, 24. Purpose of this meeting is to discuss the recent visit by Congressman Corey Mills, which took place last Thursday, April 25th. It is with great regret that I acknowledge failing to inform the full commission about Congressman Mills' visit. This was an oversight on my part, and I take full responsibility for that.
Since the inception of my role as city administrator, I have constantly emphasized the importance of transparency and ensuring that all commission members are kept informed of relevant matters. Regrettably, I deviated from the very principle in this instance. I firmly believe that every member of this commission is entitled to access and information and participation in discussion that impacts our collective responsibilities. By neglecting to inform you about the congressman who visit, I failed to uphold this commitment. I recognize that I serve the entire commission and not an individual member, and I should have acted accordingly. Please know that I am fully committed to addressing this issue during tonight's meeting. I understand the importance of open communication and accountability with our commission, and I'm dedicated to rectifying the oversight. I thank you for your understanding and your cooperation. In addition to that, because I don't want any employee to feel that they were put in an awkward position, I sent an email out to the employees, and I advised them that I apologize that I allowed myself to be put in a position that caused me to deviate from what I know is right. I apologize if that decision in any way had a negative impact on you, the employee. I will not allow any member of the commission to put me in that situation again. The system only works when I, as the CA, operate with the commission that is open, transparent, with equal access to all information that impacts the city. I need to do a better job of asking and ensuring the commission keeps the politics and the political agenda outside of City Hall. I appreciate your understanding. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Any questions?
I appreciate your emails. Thank you very much for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to check my email because I was at the American Legion and we had no power all day.
And I'm saddened. So I'm gonna take my time now, and I honestly don't want to be interrupted, okay? This is not a competition. In no way is this a competition. I'm in office to serve the citizens, to help build up the community by funding, okay? However, I can't help it because I know people in high places, but this didn't come about because of that. I was working with Corey Mills on having a public meeting. He's so busy right now that he couldn't do that. In fact, when he left here, he went to Orange City, and then he went to Oak Hill to meet with people there. He's doing sort of a grassroots tour, and then in the summertime, as you'll notice in my detailed report of what occurred, he plans on coming back. And at that time, I'm planning on having our statesman, which I don't really think I have to tell you about it, but in May, I've got another event coming up, okay? That's so the people, our elected officials in higher offices who has access to dollars that we don't have access to, can talk to our city administrator regarding the business. I didn't even hardly speak. Well, I didn't speak. The only thing I think I said in the meeting was, it's so sad that we don't seem to have a middle class any longer. Congressman Mills met with our CA. He met with the employees. So they had an hour off. That was at his request. He wanted to meet with the staff. Roxanne was there, okay? So if somebody, I guess if she's an administrator, if business wasn't being carried out, someone could have been appointed. However, business continued on. Joey sat at the end of the table. He had his radio on, listening for calls. I don't know who all was working that day.
That's good.
Pardon me?
That's it.
Okay. He had his radio on the whole time. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. The door was open. Anybody came through the front door, Erin got up and she went and she serviced. So services were not taken away, except from maybe the public works people who have the hardest job in the city. I think they were pleased to be recognized by a congressman, which they deserve totally. I heard you say one time, Mayor, you were talking about the pyramid, turning it upside down, and that's the way corporations look at it.
I don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
well, you did. You gave an example of a pyramid and you turned it up, you said, we're at the top, but we turn the pyramid down, that puts us at the bottom. You did, but we won't go there. But it's vice versa, because it's the bottom of the pyramid, the people at the bottom of the pyramid, the workers, the ones who's in the trenches every day, that builds a city, that builds a company. It was at the congressman's request for 1 hour, period. It was no way in trying to slight anyone. I contacted our city administrator because his duties are, the city administrator is responsible for coordinating the day-to-day operational activities of the various city departments. The city administrator assists the city commission in developing and is responsible for implementing city policies, procedures, and projects. The city administrator prepares the city budget and acts as the city's chief financial officer. The city administrator is also the city planning and zoning. I do believe that our city administrator has some very good information from Congressman Mills. Congressman Mills was totally elated to hear that Little Lake Helen wasn't asking for $1 million, but somewhere in the neighborhood, I think of maybe $400,000 to help go towards this building. He took a tour into the museum. He fell in love with it. He loves being around the normal people on the bottom of the totem pole because he knows that's what makes our country. Like I said, I've been working towards having all of our statesmen here, and I have that right to do that. And as a matter of fact, I literally, where my phone is, I can pull out in one of our meetings when you were talking about your meeting with Mr. Lutheran, Councilman Santiago, who of course, our representative, Councilman Dempsey, wasn't invited to that meeting. So we got no representation in your meeting with our councilman, but that's okay. Now, we're not here to throw stones, but I am here to speak the facts and the truth. The problem with these people out here starts right here at this table because they see people yelling at each other, screaming at each other, being disrespectful to each other, being disrespectful to them. You said here tonight, this meeting is about me. And what did you do? You slammed Nancy Weary. I'm waiting for you to get to me. Slam me, okay? You can do that if you want to. But it's not going to get you anywhere. Nowhere. I'm not here to try to divide this commission. I've been here to try to be helpful, vote in the right way, vote with the people that I believe on this commission are voting for the people, not against the people. So, anyway, if anybody would like to hear what was said the night that you were talking about your meeting, that you had invited Mr. Lutheran to, and I have an email that states that you made that invitation. You invited them to come up here to City Hall. And then I asked the question, well, why couldn't we have had a workshop? We could have all been in this workshop together We could have all heard the same thing at the same time. And then, Commissioner Bishop informed me that you can have any meeting, anytime, anywhere, with anybody that you want, and that you don't have to ask permission. And I believe she might remember saying that, and if not, like I
I
said.
remember saying, I
Okay.
take
Okay.
responsibility for everything I do.
So, I just want to make sure that you remember saying that to me. So if you have the right to do that, because we're all on the same commission at the same level, you are, unfortunately, I'm sure that it doesn't make you happy that you're a weak mayor and that you work in a weak mayor system.
Where do you get that from?
You have, please, I didn't interrupt you.
But you asking me a question, or you making a statement?
I'm making a statement.
Oh, okay, go ahead, keep stating.
You have no executive powers, none. This is the man here who is running our daily business, and I am so disappointed that you wrote that letter that you wrote, basically falling on the sword. You don't have to fall on the sword for me. I called you, I wanted to know about could we bring Congressman Mills in, he was coming through town. I've been working on trying to get Mills, Webster, and,
Right.
not Ryan. Mills, Webster, Broward. In. All three of them, which they've agreed to, okay, to meet with our citizens, to give them sort of a state of the county type of address. That's what I'm here for. I don't know what you expect me to be here for, but it's to help these little ladies out where they live. It's to help these employees out with everything that I can do. Thus my reason working every day from home, by the way, with a sick husband, by the way. But that's my job. And if I can help him, help you build this city up, you should be thanking me and not going, oh my God, we weren't all there. Because if two were there, then we would have a public meeting. And this was not intended to be a public meeting at all. This was nothing more than having a congressman come through town. Oh, let me back up too about him. You hearing about his bus being parked out, you know, in the parking lot. He drove up in his Escalade and his bus was delivered. It was being brought from Daytona. He never even laid eyes on it. I believe that some of the people in the works department can tell you, as that bus drove up, it sat there for maybe 5-10 minutes, and he spent his time talking to Rod and talking to Brandon. He didn't go running over to look at his 35, I would say it's probably more like a 45-foot bus, but whatever it is, I don't care. There's things that, if this commission does not get its act together, we're not going to be a commission, and we're not going to be a city. When I heard that I was, and it's all over the internet, and by the way, it's not all these complaints about what was the employees doing, taking time away. I do believe they have Friday morning meetings. I do believe that they, I think Roxanne asked the girls in the office to go ahead and take their lunch. Okay? So it's not like anything was interrupted except that all the commissioners weren't here. And I'm going to say this, and honest to God, Vernon, it's not to throw stones at you, but at my first town hall meeting, I didn't invite any commissioners. I just didn't do that. I wouldn't go to a town hall meeting for another commissioner. It's not my style. Something may come up. It can slip out without anybody realizing that they're getting ready to say something. You and Roger showed up. I had former commissioners there that I had invited, and the citizens. In that meeting, you came that close to violating the sunshine law. And I've got it if you want to hear it. I get it. We're all human. You might break the sunshine law. Does that mean that I'm going to just go and start filing an ethics complaint on you? No, not unless it's really something bad. Because I don't care. My care is for the citizens. And if you're upset, or anybody in this room is upset, any commissioner, listen, when I called Jim and said, I want to have this meeting, he's the man I'm supposed to go to. He's the one I asked questions of. He's the one that I put my trust and support in, or did. Here's the thing. I know the moment that it went on the calendar that there was going to be a meeting, you probably knew about it in 5 minutes. Because it's funny, you're here every day, up until 8 o'clock at night sometimes.
Even later than that sometimes, but since you're mentioning that.
No, I'm not finished
I know
yet.
you're not finished, but once you mention something like that, I have to interject.
No, you gotta let her finish talking, because you.
All right, you're right, Roger, you're right, Roger.
This is so
Keep going,
petulant.
keep talking.
That's the train of thought.
I'm here till 8 o'clock at night.
Now, you're here till 8 o'clock at night, and I'm working all day long from home. I don't understand what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. I really don't. But it just seems a little unusual. But I don't care. Sit up there till midnight if you want to. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous.
You're right.
And I can tell that the honeymoon's over. I have respected every person at this table for 4 months. There's been times, nearly every meeting, if not every meeting, I start to ask a question to a specific person, and I've got 4 commissioners filling in the blanks for me. Like I'm stupid. I'm not. I've been involved in politics since I was 20 years old. I'm 75 now. Okay, so I think I probably have more years behind me than you. So, you know, don't start playing games with me, because let me tell you something. I have got a treasury of things that I can do and will do without even a second thought. What these citizens have to go through in this city, sitting in a commission meeting, what Nancy Weary has to go through because someone said something about Vernon. Well, you know what? You're a public official. You can't file for defamation of character. Neither can I. Stop being mayor, then you can. But right now you can't. If you can't take the heat, then you know what you've got to do. And I'm here to take the heat. Like I said, I do not, under any circumstances, want to be on bad terms with anybody, but I'm here to do my job. And I will do it. And you won't stop me. You won't do it. So, anybody got anything to add to that?
All right.
I like it when information comes out to get both sides of the story, gives you a better evaluation of what's going on. Sounds like a big communication problem.
It sounds like somebody's reading too many emails.
I agree, it's a communication issue, and that's why I appreciate what Jim had to say in his emails, because the communication should be across the board, like he said. They deviated from that process, even though we weren't invited, which I understood that coming into this, by the way. I appreciate that Jim said, hey, normally I communicate that. And so, again, we do need to continue to communicate. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
Well, I got beat up, Heather, because I didn't go to a meet and greet, you know? I didn't go to a meet and greet because I think Kelly was debating you, probably. It was you. I didn't go to that because I was going to be a commissioner and some question could have been asked. But I got beat up because I didn't go, because I'm trying to stay, within the sunshine. I don't want to go into the shade, but I got beat up because I didn't do it. I'm trying to protect the city. That's all I'm trying to do, and myself.
Is there anyone else like that, something to say?
I'd like to say to Lynn, because I think there's a misunderstanding on the email. I'm sorry it angered you.
No, it disappointed me.
But with the
You
email.
fell on a sword that you didn't have to fall on.
Well, I just wanted this board to know that I'm still an adult too, and I made a decision. Was that decision made between you and I communicating? Yes. But I still made that decision. I could have said to you, Lynn, you can have your meeting, but I'm going to tell the mayor of the commission. So, and that's all I'm trying to say is the fact that I don't want to leave 100% of that on you.
I just said no one's invited.
Yes.
Corey didn't want anybody here except just the staff. And if there's money that was lost, want me to pay for it? But then we could also go back and look at money wasted, and I saved this city $76,000 for a roof because we had people in the front office up here that didn't have enough sense to ask about the insurance policy. No, I've done a lot here, so don't you sit here and don't you try to bring me down.
I'm not trying to bring you down, but let me just make it clear. We are all here working for the city. I'm not here, I have not been here this long not to know what my responsibilities are. And I've also worked with every single city administrator that this city has had, and every city administrator that we've had, the problems usually start with the city administrator. This was an oversight that was brought about